What's up, everybody? It is Thursday, July 26, 2018, and this is the MMA Beat. We are here inside our New York City studios. It looks like we're 2 deep. We're actually 3 deep. Let's get right to it. My name is Luke Thomas. I'm the host of this program from SiriusXM, obviously, as well as MMAFighting.com. This gentleman is Danny Segura from MMAFighting.com, and all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, via Skype, at the last minute, is Sean El-Shadi, also from MMAFighting.com. Hi, Sean.
Hey there, coming in from the bullpen, red hot. Our pork truck Mendenhall is stuck at some airport somewhere.
Yes, he tried to make it. We were supposed to have all 3 in studio, but it didn't work out because he had some travel issues. It's raining all over the East and Midwest, so hopefully Chuck gets home safe. But we have a show to do, so let's get right to it. Now, Danny, we'll go to you in just a second, Sean, but Danny, you were at the courthouse in Brooklyn today. Conor McGregor, if you're new to this, let me read out the exact nature of this. He reached a plea agreement with the district attorney, and it goes as follows. He was in a Kings County courthouse in Brooklyn, New York. It saw all of his felony counts dismissed. Per the terms of the plea deal, he pled guilty to 1 count of disorderly conduct, which I'm guessing is a misdemeanor. He'll be forced to undergo 5 days of community service, picking up trash on the highway or something like that. I doubt that. 1 to 3 days of anger management evaluation, and will be required to pay restitution for the damage he inflicted on the UFC fighter bus during the UFC 223 fight week. 3 orders of protections were also served against McGregor, including 2 by fighters Ray Borg and Michael Chiesa. McGregor will not be permitted near them until July 2020. Okay, that is what has happened, but he is not going to serve any jail time. He'll be ready to get back in the octagon, presumably if he hasn't, unless he has any licensing issues. He'll be ready to go. Danny, you were there. That's the facts of the story. Are you satisfied with this outcome?
Yeah, I mean, when you want to put someone in jail is because you think they're a threat to society, right? I don't think Conor McGregor by any means is a threat to society, and this guy is someone that perhaps serves more having him outside of a prison than in a prison. This is a guy that brings a lot of revenue to cities, you know, wherever he fights. He can educate the masses. As we know, he's probably going to do community service hours, and I doubt it's picking up trash on the highway, but I'm sure he can speak to people and educate them. So this is a guy that has a lot to offer to the world, and locking him up wouldn't really serve much. And so, yeah, I'm satisfied with the punishment he's gotten.
Sean, none of us are lawyers, none of us are judges, but you now are aware of what has happened to McGregor. I asked Danny if this was, I don't know, some kind of a reasonable outcome. As an observer, do you feel satisfied? I don't know, justice was served? Where do you come down on this?
Sure. I mean, I don't think any of us really expected anything to happen from this, right? Like he had enough charges to where technically he could have faced 7 years in jail, but I don't think anybody actually thought that was even a remote possibility. I think it's this slap on the wrist that we all knew he would get. And I'm sure by the end of this week or by the end of next week, we'll already be talking about the Khabib fight.
Do you think it gets announced in, let's say, the next 2 weeks?
I think it does, man. I mean, it seems as though right now they're looking at October or November, and if they want to get something rolling, they got to get it rolling fast. You know how much promotion goes into a Conor event, how much planning, how big these things can be. I mean, I think the fight between he and Khabib will ultimately be one of, if not the single biggest fight in the history of the sport. So if they need to get that rolling, that it needs to be figured out real soon.
Now, you were there, as I mentioned before, Danny. What did Torres say, who is the manager of Conor McGregor? Anything there of note?
Yeah, I talked to him briefly. He basically just said that, you know, Conor McGregor has changed a lot in the past few years. This is a learning experience for him, and that he wants to fight, this year. That will he fight this year? We'll find out. We'll see. But he wants to fight this year, and he's confident that you know, perhaps a fight can be agreed to.
Do you think a deal gets done in the next 2 weeks?
I think so. I mean, Conor McGregor has been out for a while. We know he's a competitor by nature. He hasn't fought in MMA for a long time. I think so. I think to put all this behind him, you know, he has to get back in the cage. He has to show the fans that, you know, he's still an active fighter, because it sort of feels like he's forgotten, and even fighters on his weight class are dismissing him. So I feel like it gets done, and I feel like we'll see him in 2018, yeah.
And then I'll go back to you, Sean, one more time. I suppose less than a question about justice being served, but how do I ask this? Do you think this is the last time Conor sees the inside of a courtroom inside of his MMA career?
inside of his MMA career. I like the caveat you threw on there. I don't know, because I don't know how long his MMA career is really going to be. I feel like we probably got 1 or 2 left with him, and that's it. I don't know that this is the last time he'll see the inside of a courtroom. He's a very, very rich man, and he has a lot of free time to do whatever he wants. So maybe, hey, who knows what will happen in the future. But, I mean, for his immediate MMA career, I would assume this would be the last time, unless this becomes some sort of John Jones spiral, which I doubt happens.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add to this. There was no real drama today at the courtroom. There was no wailing and gnashing of teeth. Any lawyer that you could have talked to beforehand not warned us, but sort of prefaced any comment by saying, well, look, if past this prologue, this guy is not going to serve any time in jail, probably won't have any felony counts, it won't affect any visas or travel issues. So in that sense, it kind of worked out. It's just kind of hilarious that it came down to like 5 days community service.
Yeah.
You know, I guess he's just going to go talk to the youth of New York City or something. I don't really know.
Tell people not to throw dollies in buses.
Yeah,
that's not a good idea.
Don't follow my example. Yeah. That's going to get me super rich and beyond how wealthy I already am. But okay, whatever. I mean, this is kind of what we expected. So I don't know if I have anything else to add to that other than I'm glad this chapter is over. And it would be nice if on the heels of this decision, or agreement rather, that the parties make a fight really quickly. I think Audio Tar, the manager of Conor, told ESPN's Ariel Helwani that they're in the red zone, right? So they're really, really close to getting that done. Hopefully they get that done lickety-split. It would be a nice, it'd just be showing that we can turn the page and really look forward. So that's that with Conor McGregor.
Before we move on, I'd like to add that he does have a pending case with Michael Chiesa, who, if I'm not mistaken, Michael Chiesa is...
not a criminal case, a civil one.
A civil one, yeah. But so you never know what happens there as well.
I'm surprised on that, Sean. Are you surprised they haven't settled that? I'm a little surprised they haven't settled that.
I think in general, everything was kind of held up waiting for this. And also, I mean, Chiesa just filed that, I think, within the past month. At least he told the media about it within the past month. And then before he fought Anthony Pettis, he said he was undecided about what he was going to do. So I'm sure that'll be settled with a quickness. But I think a lot of it was kind of depending on what was going to happen today and how this is going to move forward now.
I just got a text from a buddy of mine who's an attorney in Brooklyn telling me, he goes, told you, plea agreement, no jail time, no felony, called it. Kind of funny. It's exactly what everyone thought would happen, and it did. All right, enough of that. Let's get to what I thought was the biggest story of the week, because I want to look ahead to UFC on Fox 30 in just a second. But my God, we have to go back in time and just talk about this decision with the welterweight title picture. I sort of see this as maybe disaster is a strong word, Danny. I don't know that it's a disaster, because in the end, Till versus Woodley, the fight might end up not necessarily being all that exciting, but it's hard to complain about it in a vacuum. Well, of course, we're not living in a vacuum. Let's get to the mechanics of this, Sean. It's pretty simple to go down the line, right? You need an extra title fight because you had a women's flyweight, but that's not enough to carry a pay-per-view in this day and age by itself. So you needed another title fight. So you can't do heavyweight. You can't do light heavyweight. Middleweight you can't do. Welterweight we'll get back to in just a second. Lightweight, I guess they're waiting on Conor, so they didn't want to move that along. Featherweight, God only knows what the situation is there. Bantamweight and flyweight, they're competing next week. That turnaround seems unlikely. You go to women's bantamweight and featherweight there, and they want to make that happen when Nunes is ready a little bit later in the year, so you can't do that. Women's flowyweight's already on it, and I guess Rose Namajunas could have been on there, but I don't know that that would have been a sufficient anchor that they were looking for. So the only way to really get there was to take away a title that they had given 6 weeks ago to Colby Covington by making a Darren Till versus Tyron Woodley fight. Sean, your reaction to this, what's the best word to describe what has happened here?
It's a circus. It's a total circus. It's a complete indictment, I guess, on where we have gotten with the sport, how much belts mean, how much all of this means. Like, it's all so silly. If you look at generally the process that's happened throughout the past couple months for this welterweight division, even Colby Covington's interim title was absurdly silly from the beginning of from the moment it was entered into our world. Tyron Woodley was free to fight a month later, but once again, the UFC's demands for their super busy pay-per-view schedule needed a title fight, so they just threw an interim title fight in there, even though the champion was ready a month later. And now, like you said, 6 weeks go by, and once again, it's a casualty of the schedule Colby Covington just got surgery, so he's not ready. So now he just loses his title. It's all so silly, man. And I wonder at what point, maybe this is the tipping point where the belts have become so devalued that it actively long-term hurts sort of the organization.
Sean, excuse me, Danny, what's the best word to describe it?
It is chaotic. This is complete chaos. This makes no sense what the UFC is doing. They're just literally just trying to fill in pay-per-view main events any way they can. Meaning, if someone has to get stripped, even if they're eligible to fight a month later, they will do that. So this is completely chaos.
I find this to be crazy. Really, really crazy. Now, you can bemoan how interim titles have been handed out. You can bemoan how many times it's been used unnecessarily. It's not like before they gave it to Colby, it was the most sanctified title ever when you had that interim before. But this, to me, is different for a whole lot of reasons. The one you already articulated, that there's just a silliness to it all. There's a devaluing process that I want to get to respective to that particular matchup. But to me, Sean, it makes me ask a very basic question, and I'll put it to you because I've been thinking about this all week. I actually talked about it on my radio show, and I can't come up with an answer, a real answer. If I had to ask you to answer this following question in one sentence, what would you say? And the question being, what is an interim UFC champion? Because I swear to God, I do not know. What is it? Answer the question. What is that?
That is a damn good question, because 2 weeks ago, I would have told you interim UFC champion is basically you're holding the lottery ticket. You're the guaranteed #1 contender. That's not even true anymore. At this point, an interim UFC champion is someone who, at least for one night, fights for a title and gets paid a champion's purse. That's literally it at this point. That's all we can depend on it after Tony Ferguson and Colby Covington in a span of a couple months get stripped of their interim titles with no regard for anything. That's all we can say. It's just one night that you get guaranteed a championship purse, and that's it.
I guess it's that, but like this notion you can be a #1 contender, it's clearly not that anymore. Yeah. Like, here's my thing. People are like, well, it can sometimes mean you're a #1 contender. It can sometimes mean you're the guy who can lay claim to being the best guy in the division if the champion's out. It can sometimes mean X. It can sometimes mean Y. Well, okay, if it can sometimes mean something, but doesn't necessarily mean something, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it means absolutely nothing. Like Sean said, like, you get to make, I think Colby Covington, for his Maya fight, he made around $83,000. And then when he fought for the interim belt, he made $380,000. So it might say you make a little bit more money. But after that, you're not guaranteed a title shot, as we just saw. You can get stripped even if you're down to fight just a month later. You're not the #1 contender. You're not really a champion because they can strip you at any time you want, and not only at any time they want. And not only that, but you have no leverage whatsoever. I mean, you would think that if you have the belt, you have some kind of leverage, but the UFC can strip you just like that. So it really means nothing to be an interim champion.
Yeah, because if you think about it as a title, right, Sean? A title has to confer some kind of status. So I guess to your point, right, the status is that to the extent you hold it, you can make a little bit more money, right? But yeah, there are no ground rules at all. And that's true for the title itself, but it's truly just a totally subjective, tenuous process by which they award it and take it away. So the answer is, I don't know what it means. I guess as long as you have it, you make more money. But like in terms of conferring status upon you, it does not confer status any longer, does it?
No, and that's just a honest, blunt answer to this. I mean, that's sort of the bed that the UFC has made for themselves. Again, when you do this twice in a matter of months. I mean, Tony Ferguson was one thing. He was injured. I mean, that was a situation where you just needed to move that division forward. You didn't really have a timeline for how long Tony was going to be out. That one was understandable on some wavelength. Like, you could generally make an argument for why that needed to happen. This one is literally just because the UFC didn't want to discover a new baseline for how low a pay-per-view could sell. Like, it's just absurd, man. It really is absurd. And not only that, to do it, to take away that title and then to give the shot to someone who missed weight, but not only missed weight by a little bit, missed weight by 3 full pounds, which is a ton. It's 30% up to the next division. At this point, we're just doing whatever and just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing if anything can stick.
Danny, I'll ask you. People say, oh, well, it's the interim title. It's not how they would treat the actual title. If you're an actual title holder, should you be concerned?
Of course, because if you can't defend the belt whenever you can, the UFC can strip you and just create an interim title or just make you vacate it and then, you know, create a fight to fight for the undisputed belt. I mean, at this point, the UFC's priority is to fill pay-per-view slots, to fill in the headliner slots. So if you don't fit those plans, they'll do anything possible to get that slot filled in. So if that means stripping you, they very well could be. So, yeah, champions are definitely in danger in this day and age, but it also benefits contenders. Anybody who's in the top 10, if you got a number next to your name, all you need to do is stay ready, because at any moment there's a slot available. They'll have to call someone, just like they called Darren Till. So they're giving up title shots just like that.
Sean, you know what's really amazing to me about all of this is people are saying, well, it's just about they needed to fill a calendar. You know, Colby had a job to stay ready. Yo, Colby was ready. Fighting twice in a year, particularly on a championship level, is totally common. A lot of fighters I talk to want to get 3 if they can in a year, but people looking at Cowboy at like 4 times a year is totally absurd. It's not the norm at all. 2 times, 3 times, that's about what it was. And asking for a 2-month delay, I don't think is in any way some kind of significant process. If you want to push it off to 2019, well, that might be a bit of a different scenario. But this, to me, gets to the heart of the matter, which is, who do you blame for this? I do not blame Colby at all. Here's what I can say, man. I know, and you know this as well as I do. I've been wrong about a lot of things, man. A lot of things in my life, both personal and professional. But one thing I was not wrong about was 5 years ago when some of us were raising the alarm bells that there were way too many shows going on, among a number of other problems, that bill was going to come due. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Economics 101. Milton Friedman made that point a long time ago. Okay? That bill is now due, and you're seeing us pay it by the eroding fan base. This bill is also going to come due, and I don't know when and I don't know what form, but this idea that you can create a calendar so aggressive and you can erode your fan base to the point where you now have to double up on titles all the time, and that's not going to carry consequences down the road for contenders, for champions, for titles, for the brand, for the sport, to me is insane. This bill will come due, and in what form, I don't know. So if they had to make, Sean, this process happen to save this pay-per-view, I get it. But without a corresponding change in the way in which they do business, I find it extremely alarming.
Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. The oversaturation argument was something I heard you make repeatedly. And at this point, I feel like that bill is almost coming due. Like we've reached a point where, I mean, the UFC, especially in the past 2 years, it seems as though, I'd say the past year in particular, it seems as though they're not willing to run a pay-per-view without 2 title fights. It seems like that's kind of just their baseline now. And I don't know that that's actually helping them in any way, because they're still, pay-per-view sales are still lower than they ever really have been on average. Like they used to run these shows where it was just, you know, Faber versus Barao or DJ versus Carriasso, and that was like the main event. And then you could save titles along the way. But at this point, they're using these titles so abundantly. Every month there's two, and it's just at a point that schedule is not sustainable at all. And I feel like we've reached it, because again, if this happens twice in a matter of months and it had never happened before, what are we doing?
And the other thing that's crazy to me about this, Danny, is like, look, Darren Till is an incredible fighter. Tyron Woodley is an incredible fighter. When 2 incredible fighters get together on that level, you can't complain too much. Yes, there are some other issues. Till missing weight, and you know, not only missing weight, Sean, going blind in the process. I mean, what happens if he goes to Dallas and he misses weight? You know, I actually looked up his old weigh-in scenarios, and he has made 170, not 171, several times. So he obviously can get it done. Whether he will in Dallas, God only knows. I certainly hope. But the thing that kills me, Danny, is like, you had a real grudge match here, man. Yeah. You had a real grudge match, and you can like Colby Covington or you can hate him, but that's the point. And you can like Tyron Woodley or you can hate him. That's also the point. And those 2 guys hated each other. Who only knows if they could have made a real MAGA moment for Colby and taken him to the White House? I would have been in favor of that, right? The whole thing. And people have told me, oh, well, you can just do that down the road. Oh, my effing God. Are you kidding me? It's like, do you not know the MMA gods? they don't like us very much. They are vengeful bastards, and they will lay down the hammer of pain upon you ceaselessly and with glee to your face over and over again. If there is one thing, Danny Segura, that I have learned in 10 years in this business is do not fuck with the MMA gods. The idea that that you could do this and that, oh, well, they'll just make it down the line. What if Tyron Woodley decides to retire? By the way, he's 36 years old. I'm not saying he will, but I don't know if it's the craziest idea. What if Till wins, and now you have to do Till Colby? What if Colby wins, but then Tyron gets injured? Or any other kind of permutation. I'm not saying this fight is lost forever, but oh my God, the idea that you can just recreate it down the line seems insane to me.
I mean, Woodley has been a guy that has been very respectful to his opponent, Stephen Thompson, right? Damian Maia. This was the first time that we felt that it was like a natural rivalry, right? That he had. And Colby Covington has been hyping this up for a while since he beat Damian Maia. Since he's been around, he's just been calling out Woodley for a while. So there's been a bunch of momentum picking up, and winning the interim title, although we are not really, you know, a lot of people don't really like how the circumstances behind that interim title. You still had a champion versus champion fight. There was so much going into this, and now you just stopped the momentum. Could the momentum again pick up later in the future?
Possible.
For sure, yeah. But you just killed a lot of work, months, years of work. This fight has been in the works. And Tyron Woodley, I mean, for that fight, it almost felt like he was like the baby face, right? Like, a lot of people were like,
right, this is a chance for Tyron, in my judgment, who's been unfairly maligned. This is a chance for him to really go out there and recruit that fan base, Sean. Yeah. So do you agree with Danny and me? I don't know, how could you possibly disagree that, like, losing that, again, I don't know if it's lost forever, but my God, talk about rolling the dice.
No, absolutely, man. Like, this was the one. This is like over the past couple of years, Tyron Woodley. It's no secret that the fan base has kind of turned against him, largely because of these requests for money fights, and his last few fights have been very, very boring, if we're just being honest. But this was really his one chance to, like, you were already seeing people rally behind him of like, okay, in this matchup, I'm going to go for Tyron. Like, Tyron is the babyface. This was perfectly set up for him to actually make like a pretty sizable leap forward just in terms of his career and the way people view him and the way people think about him. And also, man, I mean, just stylistically, if nothing else, Colby is a very aggressive fighter. He would have brought an entertaining fight to Tyron. I don't know that Darren Till versus Tyron Woodley is going to be, I mean, there is a big chance in my mind that could be an equally boring fight as, you know, the Wonder Boy fight or the Maia fight, just given the way the styles play. Like, and I don't know if Tyron Woodley, with the damage he could take at that point of having 3 fights in a row, that would be that bad. Like, what would that do to him at that point?
Yeah, I also thought that too. Like, I don't know in the end how Tyron Woodley versus Darren Till is going to look. I have a hunch that both guys will at least be in the early stages hesitant, but after that, it's kind of hard to say. But I thought Colby would have been a little bit more exciting. It just kills me that Colby's whole run has been about Ty Quill. Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to make welterweight great again. And he was on his way, man. He was on his way. It was happening. And now all of a sudden, poof, it happened. So here's the last question about this. What is Colby Covington going to do from here? What should he do from here?
I mean, at this point, just get healthy and be ready, because you know the UFC is creating interim titles left and right. So he could very well find himself in another spot fighting for a belt. So just stay ready. See how Till plays out. I mean, you never know. You never know how that fight's going to go down. But, yeah, I mean, at this point, just stay ready. Taking another fight, I don't really know if that helps his case. I think,
yeah, should he fight Kamaru Usman?
Yeah, I think
that seems like a real bad idea, right? Yeah. You got to fight that huge guy.
Yeah, that's a huge gamble. And I mean, the worst thing about the situation is that Colby has put in the work. Make what you want about Colby, but Colby promoted this fight, and he's not only gunning for the welterweight title, but he's gunning for Tyron Woodley, and he's made this very, very personal. He's put in the work. Not only that, he's beaten the right guys. He's done everything he's got to do, and yet he still doesn't have that opportunity. So at this point, what does Kamaru Usman add to like a win over him? Sure, he's a super worthy opponent, very skilled guy, but what does it do to his career? Not much. Does it hype up the fight with Tyron Woodley?
He was already the guy with a belt around his waist.
Exactly. He's done everything possible to get that fight. So at this point, all the work is done. If I were Colby Covington, I would just wait, see how that fight plays out, and, you know, hope for the best.
All right, so let's move on here a little bit to, instead of looking back, let's look forward. UFC on Fox 30 is this weekend, UFC Calgary, the creative duo of Esther and Casey. They're up in Calgary. I believe Mark Ramundi is there as well, and there might be some other people too.
Alexander Lee.
He's up there as well?
Alexander Lee.
Yeah. So Alexander Lee is up there as well. And so I am intensely looking forward to this. Sean, I'll go to you first on this one. I spoke to Alvarez and Poirier in the main event on the MMA Hour on Monday, and they have, they seem as, you know, it's just almost, I don't want to call it the perfect fight because I don't know what that would mean, but you can't ask for much more. You have stakes, you have two heavy hitters, you have two guys who are resilient, two guys who have everything to win, two guys who have everything to lose at this moment in their career, some a little bit more than others. But I'm going to pitch this one to you, Sean. What is the best feature about this fight? And really, when you examine this, what's on the line here?
I mean, if you won't call it the perfect fight, I'll call it the perfect fight because it is. Everything about this fight is so set up to be absolutely what we need right now in every regard. The stakes in this fight, I've never, like, you could not ask for higher stakes. The lightweight division right now, especially with what's happened today with Conor and sort of him and Khabib moving forward and Tony slowly getting healthy. I mean, he's releasing videos. He seems pretty healthy now. There's a little window, it appears, for someone to slip through and get a title shot, if not at the end of this year, then at the beginning of next year, whatever that next step would be. And Dustin and Eddie, at this point, whoever wins that fight feels like they truly belong in sort of this little triangle that we've had with Conor, Khabib, and Tony. And just to be able to get there and you know, this little window in time where if they can get in there, maybe they can steal a title shot in this sort of cluster of a division. The stakes mean everything, man. And it just is the perfect fight. The way that first fight was going was well on its way to being a fight of the year contender. And I think this one could do the same.
Danny, who has the most to win? Who has the most to lose? It could be the same guy. But what do you think? I
think the most to win, I would say Dustin Poirier, because
why?
You know, he's never had a title shot. He's never been, you know, in that title discussion. This is really the first time if he gets a win here where you can make a case that he should fight for the belt next. You know, Eddie Alvarez has been there, not only in this promotion, but also in Bellator. Who has the most to lose, I would say Eddie Alvarez, because
I would agree with that.
If he loses, I mean, it's hard to get back on the top. Dustin Poirier at least, you know, has some momentum. You can see he feels like the fresher fighter. He feels like he can get right back on the horse, and he has done it several times and get back into title contention. Eddie Alvarez, at this point in his career, pretty deep. If he loses, he's going to have to do a lot of work to get back on top. I
would actually agree with that, Sean. I don't know if you do. I think Eddie Alvarez has a lot more to lose. He's on the last fight of his deal, and I was looking at the money he made. He made more money in his last fight in Bellator than he did in his last fight in the UFC. Now, not significantly more, I think only about 10 grand more, but you can completely understand why he would want to make more money. He made, I think, $155K. 5 of that, by the way, came in Reebok money. Every time I see that, I just can't believe that's the reality, but it's the reality, okay? So he made that. Now, for the fight against McGregor, he made over $500,000. So that obviously was pretty great. But I can understand why he would want to do it. But nevertheless, he's in his early to mid 30s. Dustin Poirier has had a long, tough road, Sean, but he's still 29 years old. He's still got some time to recover. For me, this is huge. Frankly, I would argue, Sean, the last real chance Eddie has to negotiate on his behalf.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, if he wins this fight and goes into the negotiating period on the crest of this, like having really, you know, beaten Dustin Poirier, this impressive fight, and established himself back in that title mix, the world is his oyster. Like, I could see him going back to Bellator. I could see him getting a massive deal with the UFC. Either or, like, he'll be needed at that point. And you're right, for both men, though, it feels to me like this is really a crossroads, a true inflection point for their career, where this will decide the next several years of each man's career, whether they're going to be in that conversation or whether they're going to have to be in that, fall back to that middle tier of lightweights. And you know that whole tier where it's like the Kevin Lees and the Barbozas and all these guys, it is so difficult to make that leap from that chunk up into the upper echelon. It takes several fights and several opportunities.
Let's go back to Dustin Poirier here for just a second, although the Alvarez one to me is kind of, I think actually the Alvarez situation is a little more interesting because the stakes are so much higher. But it's not like they're small for Dustin Poirier too. He's gotten to the top. and then had a setback. Gotten to the top and have a setback. If he beats Eddie Alvarez here, maybe he gets a title shot, maybe he doesn't, and whatever his ranking is. But is there something more to it? Like, was the Justin Gaethje win his signature win, or would this be the signature win? I know he beat Max Holloway, but he beat Holloway before Holloway was actually Holloway in the way that we understand him. I don't want to take it away from Max, or rather from Dustin, but I do think it's a fair argument.
Yeah.
Would this be like the coming out party for Dustin Poirier? It sounds kind of strange, but could be.
This is a career-defining moment for Dustin Poirier. I mean, if he wins, all throughout his career, he's been considered this really tough guy that's very skilled. He's certainly a top contender, but he's never been the guy, the contender. Eddie Alvarez has been there. All these guys has been there. Anthony Pettis, who he's beat, has been there. He has not. So I think this would solidify him as, look, this guy's a serious threat to the title, and he deserves a shot. And that's something I feel like he's been searching throughout his entire career. And just at this point, he's got the experience. It seems like skill-wise, he's coming together. Everything's coming together for this moment. So it's a huge moment for him, and one that will determine whether he's that middle-tier lightweight or he's a serious contender.
Sean, and do you take anything from their pre-fight comments or anything from yesterday's workout? I know it's often trying to, using a Ouija board to try and figure out what's happening around you. It can be very imprecise, but nevertheless, you've seen what he's had to say, and you saw the workouts yesterday. What do you make of each man's demeanor?
It's interesting to me the disrespect that Dustin feels going into this fight. Hearing him speak yesterday, I mean, basically said that he respects everything Eddie has done just as an athlete and as a fighter. He doesn't feel Eddie feels likewise, and Eddie found that whole notion just laughable. So it is interesting to me, sort of the demeanor that Dustin is coming into this with. But man, these guys have experienced this with each other. They have really gone back and forth with each other for a year at this point. It feels as though both man knows exactly what's on the line, exactly what the other's bringing, and I can't tell you how much I'm excited, man. This cannot come soon enough.
Yeah, the lightweight division, once again, is the undisputed king of MMA. So let's move on to something else, which I would say is not the king of MMA, but one time was the king of the featherweight division. Jose Aldo. Man, I got to be honest, Danny. I don't know if this is an opportunity for Jose Aldo to remind us what time it is. Like, we slept on him. We cast him aside because, remember, he has 2 losses in a row. He's got 2 losses in a row to Max Holloway, who is one of the more technical and tough fighters in all of mixed martial arts, but they were bad losses. Yeah. He is a little bit older. He's got that, Sean, he's got that LeBron James hairline working now. You know what I mean? Like, he's just visibly older. I remember when he was like the youthful kid bouncing around the blue cage in WEC. So let me ask you, is this the last stand of Jose Aldo? Because he's facing a super heavy hitter. By the way, Jeremy Stephens has had an up-and-down career. There's no denying it. But, man, this is maybe the best up he's ever been on. Yeah. The current spot he's in right now. I mean, he rearranged Josh Emmett's face. All right? So let's get to it. Is this the Alamo? Is this the end? Is this where he figuratively dies on the hill of his career? Or is this the moment where Jose Aldo turns things around and makes one more move for UFC gold?
I think maybe a few years ago, or if this was a different UFC, I'd be like, okay, this is a do or die for him. But given the landscape, I mean, we're just talking about interim titles. He has
you don't agree it's do or die?
No, not at all. I mean, he has a huge name in the division. He has history with a bunch of fighters there. Let's say, dude, down the line, anything can happen at featherweight, especially given, the uncertainty of Max Holloway's health. He could easily get an interim title shot. I mean, or any title shot. Anything can get created. So he's already up there in that conversation. So no matter what happens, he will always be in that discussion. Now, he himself, he said it that he's going to fight out his contract and he's going to retire. He spoke to our own Guilherme Cruz. And I don't know, reading those quotes, it felt like he feels like he's the contender again. He feels like he's the young guy again. And this is a perfect fight for him. This is a guy that's not going to try to take him down, who's going to really fight him where he's at his best, which is the stand-up department. So I think this is a really good fight for him, and this could be, I would say, the beginning of cleaning up his career, because towards the end it got a little patchy there.
Sean, do you agree with Danny that this is not necessarily do or die, or am I onto something?
No, I think you're onto something, Luke, and it is really actually bizarre to me. Like, if you take a step back and you say 5 years ago, I told you that we're going to have a fight between Jose Aldo and Jeremy Stephens, and Jose Aldo was the one where you would be asking, is this a do or die fight for his career? You would what you would just, your mind would be blown, like what happened along that road. But man, one thing though that I do want to note, it does seem like people have forgotten, like losing to Max Holloway is one thing. Like that's something that you can kind of excuse given how dominant Max Holloway is. Jose Aldo's fight before that, he looked better than he ever had against Frankie Edgar at UFC 200. Like he looked like a renewed beast in that fight. I came away so impressed from that fight. So the Max Holloway fights, it's difficult because I wish he wouldn't have had them back to back, right? Like I wish he would have gotten one in between so we could actually see a gauge of where he is now. At this point, I don't have that gauge because how he reflects, Max Holloway may just be a bad matchup. Max Holloway may just be an incredible, amazing fighter. So if past his prologue, you know, like at that point, all I'm going off is the Frankie Edgar fight. Is Jose more in that place where how he looked against Frankie, or is he just at this point how he looked against Max? I don't know, but I do agree with you that how he performs on Saturday night against a guy like Jeremy Stephens, who has been in this industry as long as him pretty much, I think that will tell us a lot moving forward about where this is with Jose and whether this is kind of how the end of his career is going to end, right? If he's just going to kind of fade out facing, you know, these contenders at featherweight rather than really competing for the title.
In fairness to the point, though, if you're bringing up UFC 200 success, and certainly I share it, I did a whole Monday Morning Analyst on it about how just absolutely insane his takedown defense was and his timing was. Everything was on point. But, you know, also on that card was Miesha Tate, Brock Lesnar. I know he's back now. But Cain Velasquez, Travis Brown, Juliana Pena, Johnny Hendricks, like, it's not the same MMA anymore. It moves fast. And it's not just to me that he lost to Max Holloway. He took beatings. He took serious, straight-up beatings, particularly in that first one. He had to get the will beaten out of him, and it was hard to watch, frankly. Now, you don't want to bury the guy because, in my judgment, he's still the all-time best featherweight. But it's also a pretty unique opportunity for Jeremy Stephens. I had mentioned before in my preamble, he's had his ups, he's had his downs. My God, this run he's on is pretty incredible. So let's talk about him for just a second. If he gets the nod, Danny, and not the nod of the, my God, what if he stops Aldo? Where does that put Jeremy Stephens? That for sure would be a signature win in his career.
Yeah, he'd be right in title discussion. I mean,
if he wins, should they make an Ortega versus Stephens title fight?
It makes sense. I mean, that's the fight that they were trying to make when Holloway pulled out, right? We'll have to see what happens with Max Holloway. But if Max Holloway's out for a long period of time, you can bet your money that there's going to be an interim title. And the most deserving guy right now is Ortega to be involved in it. But you need another guy, and that obviously has to be Jeremy Stephens if he defeats Jose Aldo, because that's a signature win, a former champion. And Jeremy Stephens has just looked ridiculously good. And it's so interesting to see him get this good this late in his career, which is pretty bizarre. But I mean, he's looked great, and on top of that, he puts on really exciting fights, which always favors him, you know, when the promotion has to give out title shots and whatnot, puts him right in the discussion. So, yeah.
Sean, you know what's amazing to me about Jeremy Stephens? I had him on my show, I don't know, about a year ago, or not even, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, something like that. And we were bringing up guys getting the call to take fights, and I think I asked him why he took a fight, because I think he had taken one at the time on short notice. I cannot remember which one it was. And his answer was, of course I took it. And he followed it up with, I didn't know that fighters could be in the position to turn them down. And what he meant was, not that he didn't actually know you could, but that by the code of honor, it would be totally a disreputable thing to do that. Man, you know what's amazing about him? He got started in UFC in his early 20s, right? And again, he's had ups, he's had some downs. But he is at the same time a throwback fighter and not over the hill. And that's a very rare thing to be in MMA today. It puts him in a very interesting position. Do you share my sense of this two worlds that he crosses?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in a way, he's almost like a Bisping-esque old school character where he's having this late run very late in his career, right? Like, he's only 32 years old. But how long has he been in the UFC, man? I think he debuted in, like, 2007. Like, this is going on year 11. Like, for him to really true in Bisping-esque fashion have the best run of his career this late in a completely different weight class, having just reinvented himself over and over and over. I mean, he's almost like the long-term version of what RDA became in the sense that I feel like for a large portion of his career, we didn't expect this sort of greatness from him. And then all of a sudden it just emerged, and now he's here, and it's hard to deny him. Absolutely. I mean, if Jose Aldo, I mean, I'm a little biased because I have a painting of Jose Aldo right there. I did a giant feature on him in my time. Like, I still consider him the featherweight GOAT, just like you. A win against Jose Aldo is still a win against Jose Aldo in my mind. And if Jeremy Stephens can pull this off, not only is it a career high for him, but I feel like he absolutely gets, I guess, thrown right into that mix with Frankie Edgar and Brian Ortega, where whatever does happen with Max Holloway, Jeremy Stephens is right there to snatch it.
It almost feels like Dustin Poirier and Jeremy Stephens are sort of in the same spot. They're very tough guys. They're really good guys that have been around for a while and have, you know, had some up and downs. And this is their fight. This is their moment to solidify their legacy and show that they're the real deal.
I would agree to an extent. I don't think Poirier has had as many lows.
Yeah.
Poirier's been a little bit more elite, a little bit longer.
He's had some more high-profile wins. Yeah.
And I would also say that Alvarez, the thing is, Sean, I don't know if Jose Aldo's over the hill. I don't think that he is. I think I share your assessment. I think he's probably still a very formidable opponent, but I don't know that he's as formidable relative to the weight class as I would consider an Alvarez, but that could be wrong about that. We got to move along because we're short on time here a little bit. So let's get to the other one on this card. You want to talk about flying under the radar. My goodness. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she returns, talking about consecutive losses and your back's up against the wall, takes on Tecia Torres. You know what's amazing to me about this, Danny? Has she done any media? I mean, I realized she did media yesterday, but it seems like, you know, usually she's really generous with her time with the media. You can understand it. She was the champion for a long time. She was trying to get her title back. This time, man, she has been quiet as a church mouse. What do you make of that?
I like it. I do think... I
love it.
I think she had a dial down. And this is not the case of like a Ronda Rousey that she just disappeared and never addressed media and kind of changed who she was, right?
She put on a show. No, super fairness. Yeah. She put on a show at the...
She put on a show, and she was still had that personality that we've always seen. She's still very confident. She's just dialed down the percentage of media she's done, but she's still there. So she hasn't changed that. And I think that's great. She's focusing on fighting, on making weight, and on climbing the ladder again. And I know a lot of people have made a lot of issues. Oh, she should have gone up to flyweight. You know, her weight cuts are looking tough. And I feel like that's sort of the trend now. Every time somebody fails to make weight, everybody just goes, oh, move up a weight class. You have to move up a weight class. But we're just talking about Jose Aldo. Not so long ago, his weight cuts were looking pretty rough. I mean, the videos that he was, before that Darren Till video, Jose Aldo was the original.
How about the fight against Mark Hominick, where he was just completely checked out in the 5th round?
Yeah, and then he managed to fix his weight issues, and then from then on went to get the title again. So I think I sense that in Joanna Jedrzejczyk. I don't think a move up to flyweight is needed. I feel like strawweight is her weight class, and I feel like we're going to see that.
Sean, what's on the line for the former champion?
I think a lot. I think she's in a very, very similar situation to Jose. Maybe not in terms of where she stands in her career, in terms of overall timeline and trajectory, but just in terms of the immediate future, man. Like she's coming off back-to-back losses against Rose, and a loss against Tecia. All respect to Tecia, but I feel like Tecia is on a different tier of that division, and a loss against Tecia would be devastating to Joanna's future hopes in that division. I don't know at that point where she would really be. She would kind of be spinning her wheels, and a move to flyweight would almost be necessary. Whereas if she beats Tecia, you really don't know. I mean, the jury's still out on Rose. I mean, maybe she's a good matchup for Joanna, and she wouldn't be against other fighters. She has lost fights in the UFC. So it could be a new champion very soon. I mean, if Jessica Andrade gets the title, Joanna is right back in there in that title mix. So for Joanna, it's imperative that she wins just to keep that spot in case there's any upheaval in that division.
And for Torres, she just coming off a loss to Andrade, but Andrade lost to, you don't want to put too much MMA math, but Andrade lost to Jedrzejczyk. So you're saying to yourself, well, if she can get past Jedrzejczyk, maybe there might be a reason to think she can get past Andrade a second time. It's hard to say exactly, but certainly I would say you beat Joanna Champion. I know she still has a bit of that moniker that people will use. Again, it's a huge opportunity for Tecia Torres, who has put together some good wins, but hasn't quite crossed that threshold. I would say certainly much more to lose for Double J.
Yeah, for sure.
A ton to win if you're Tecia Torres here.
Yeah, and let's not forget, I mean, Torres is one-on-one with the champion, Rose. Right. So that could set up an easy trilogy fight if she wins. And not only that, but she'd be beating a Joanna Jedrzejczyk, not a Joanna Jedrzejczyk that got destroyed. I mean, that first fight it was fairly quick, but that second fight with Rose Namajunas was very competitive, and she looked good in some rounds. So she's beating a very game fighter still. So yeah, this is a huge opportunity for Tecia Torres. If she wins, I mean, she's got that history with the champion for sure. She puts her name in the hat.
Yeah, I am dying to see that. There's a number of good fights on that card, but we need to move along just in the interest of time. So there was something else that happened this week, if I could get to it. On Tuesday, on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, Nick Newell faced Alex Munoz, losing a unanimous decision, fairly in my judgment. It's one of those weird shows where I thought Munoz was trying to win and not trying to get a contract, and I can't necessarily blame him for that because he'd been off for 20 months. He was ultimately not offered a contract. Sean, I'll go to you on this. Were the critics vindicated by Newell's loss? And by the critics, I mean those that thought he never should have been in the UFC to begin with.
I mean, I guess. I don't know. That seems like a pretty fatalistic, cynical way to look at it. I mean, Nick Newell has been UFC quality for a long time. The fighter he lost to, Munoz, is a very talented fighter who's coming off the layoff, but comes from a big camp. He was a wrestler at a major university wrestling powerhouse university. Nick Newell, I mean, it is what it is, man. Like, I don't know that this is one fight as an indictment on his entire career. He's fought pretty solid level competition his entire career for the most part and done extremely well. I mean, this was only his second loss, and it was a very high pressure situation. I don't know that. I mean, if people want to revel in this, I guess they can. But to me, he's still a world-class fighter, and he still has a spot in this sport easily. Should have already been in the UFC, and if he's never going to be at this point, I would still love to see him in Bellator, see what Rich Chow and Scott Coker can do with him. Just there are a number of options for him if he still wants to keep going. I mean, I know the UFC for him was kind of the be-all, end-all.
Biggest takeaway from the fight?
This is how the game goes. I mean, Nick Newell, it almost felt like what was supposed to happen, that he was going to get the win, and it was the contract. It just felt, you know, that was the path. But, you know, this is how this game goes. He was matched up against the wrestling coach of Team Alpha Male, who's a camp that's known for the wrestling. Very tough matchup, and he still did pretty well. It was a pretty competitive fight. And who knows if he's going to get another shot. It kind of felt like this is it, just the way he took, the route that he took towards the UFC, you know, being in the Contender Series. I don't think he'll get another shot in the Contender Series. Who knows? And then who knows if he'll decide to continue on fighting. But yeah, I mean, this is how the game works. You go in there and you win or you lose.
Do you think Bellator will sign him? I know that Bjorn Rebney, they were interested in him, and I think they did, in fact, offer him a deal, but he went the other way because I think he was making more money with World Series of Fighting, or he liked the promotional opportunities a little bit better there. But to me, it's like this is a very promotable guy, talented enough to hold his own. It would be promotional malpractice for a major promoter to not want to sign him. I still believe that. Sean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you fully. I mean, he's a person who brings a built-in audience. People want to tune in when Nick Newell fights, and I know that Scott Coker and Rich Chow know that. Again, I think it all is going to fall on what Nick wants to do. Whether this was sort of the end of his journey, the end of his road, he got his shot and it didn't work out for him, or if he still feels like there's more left that he wants to try out, more money he can make. I would not be surprised at all if Scott Coker and that whole crew make a move for him, because they really could. I mean, they could pick certain matchups, give him a nice build back up, and really start drawing some eyes. Bellator, especially with this new DAZN deal, has money to spend, and they have events to fill, and they need eyeballs to come to the service. And Nick Newell will, just as he did for UFC Fight Pass, I'm sure, will get eyeballs to your service.
DAZN. Still can't get over that name. What's a worse name, DAZN or Bellator? I honestly don't know. The only thing I would say about this, lastly, if I can just opine about the Nick Newell thing, the claim was never that he would go and dominate the UFC. The claim was, I don't know how he's going to do, but it's worth a roll of the dice. I still think the jury's out in that capacity, but you know, people are going to make up their own mind about it. The only thing I will say is, I think we finally put to bed this dumbass idea that, do you guys remember Anthony Robles, you should know him, Sean, the Arizona State wrestler who only had one leg? And there were there were very stupid people in this world who used to argue that that was actually an advantage. And it's like, sure, I'm sure that not having another leg is super advantageous. The truth is, in certain scrambling positions, there are some advantages because of the way he could get his body low and how he could really develop his upper body muscles to compensate. But the reality is, having a leg missing on balance is a net disadvantage. This was one of those fights I actually thought, when you watched Newell versus Munoz, you could see it was a net disadvantage. It's an advantage for certain choke positions from the front. He's really got that on lock, and Munoz almost got caught late. But you could see, you know, if you notice when they catch a kick from him, that he really loses his balance because he can't use his hands to push off and either catch himself when he goes down or to put his hands on the shoulders and biceps of his opposition. So he has no real way to balance. You could see that a lot. But you know, I did see people being like, well, maybe it's actually an advantage. Finally, we can put that idiotic idea to bed. All right, another topic we still have with the show remaining. Anthony Smith, Lionheart, has arrived, ladies and gentlemen, putting out Shogun Rua's lights in 90 seconds in the main event of UFC Hamburg. Following up just last month, he did virtually the same thing to Rashad Evans. Okay, here's what's interesting to me about this, Sean. Here is a guy who toiled in the regional scene, losing 13 times, a couple of those in the UFC, of course, but had several double-digit losses through regional and smaller shows. And Strikeforce is not regional, but you get the idea. And slowly over time, just got a little bit better, and figured himself out. Now, look, I'm not saying he's going to win the rest of his career, but when you look at Anthony Smith, what in your mind explains his success, and what lesson do you take from his journey?
Perseverance, man. I mean, at one point, this guy was 5-6. At one point, he was 8-7. Like, when you're 8-7, you fought 15 professional times. At that point, I would imagine a large percentage of people would just be like, well, maybe this isn't for me. I should try something else. And man, the guy kept going and kept going. And the run he is on now is just utterly remarkable. I mean, he is 30 years old, and he has continued to improve, very much like a Jeremy Stephens. He has continued to improve and evolve with a game that is evolving at such a rapid pace. And now I think this move to light heavyweight is really the piece de resistance on all of it. Like, he is a big light heavyweight. Like, he is a true light heavyweight. I have no idea how this man made middleweight at all, and especially for that long. He looks like he belongs among that light heavyweight elite, and it's remarkable to say, man. Like, I don't think if I told you last year even that Anthony Smith would be a top 5, top 6, 7 light heavyweight, I think you would tell me that I'm crazy. So all credit goes to that man for just not giving up.
Danny, how good is Anthony Smith?
I think he's really good. I think he's obviously a contender, but I am a bit hesitant. A lot of people are saying, well, he's up there. He's a contender. I am a little hesitant to say he's arrived at the division. I do think promotionally, just because he's beaten.
Well, I think promotionally he's arrived.
Promotionally he's arrived just because he's got wins over 2 former champions,
right.
First-round knockouts. I mean, he's done literally the best you could do against those guys. But I also want to keep in mind that those guys are really at the end of their career. Rashad Evans hasn't won a fight in a while.
And retired.
Shogun Rua, yeah, he had a little bit of a 3-fight win streak, but against what kind of opposition?
Yeah, he was ranked 8th in that division.
In a very shallow division.
Okay, but Anthony Smith went into that fight unranked.
I know. Again, I don't wanna put down Anthony Smith. I think he's done fantastic with the opportunities that he's been getting. But I am hesitant. I want to see him face Ilir Latifi. I want to see him against the guy that's, not in the end of his career. I want to see him against a relevant guy that's ranked and see how he fares against that type of competition. And then I'll know if he's really a contender or not in that division. But as of now, beating Shogun Rua and then beating Rashad Evans doesn't really show me that he's championship level.
Yeah, my attitude on all of this is it doesn't prove that he's elite, but an elite fighter would beat Shogun and Rashad the way that he did. In other words, like, it's like if you beat the Browns by 30 points, right? If the Cardinals beat the Browns by 30 points, Sean, I don't know that that makes them elite, but I'm also sure that the Patriots would beat the Browns by 30 points. Understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a good way to put it, right? Because The jury's still out. It's very clear. I mean, Shogun and Rashad are for whatever for all of their credentials that they have, they are where they are in their careers at the very end, and that's very understandable. I don't think anybody's arguing against that. But the way that Anthony Smith so viciously tore them to pieces, both in under 2 minutes, you're right. That is how an elite fighter would fare against those two guys in those two circumstances. So it is certainly worth, and not to mention, this was back-to-back months. Like he did he had the Rashad fight in June, and then the Shogun fight was a month later. So it is worth getting excited about, I think, moving forward, what this Anthony Smith has sort of become.
And if you're one of these guys, you're sitting on the outside of the rankings, outside the top 10, outside the top 15, everyone above you is going to deny you, except on short notice when they have to take it. That is your opportunity. That is exactly what he did, and good for him. That's how you get ranked when guys won't fight you. Stay ready, which, by the way, he's able to do because he's not cutting as much weight. Let's end on this if we can. I want to introduce a new part to the MMA Beat. We gotta update the MMA Beat. We gotta refresh it. We gotta put some Febreze on it. You know what I'm saying? So, you ever Febrezed your clothes before a date? I know you have, you dirty dog.
My room, I don't know about my clothes.
Guilty as charged over here. All right, but the point being is this. Let's figure out something that's going under the radar in MMA. It doesn't have to be, it could be super small story, just some kind of nugget or something. What's a fighter or a story that people aren't thinking of that you saw that kind of caught your attention? Again, didn't necessarily make headlines, just something that's keep your eye on. What happened this week or recently in your mind? What's under the radar for you, Danny?
Well, I'll just point out that, for me, the top prospect in MMA right now, Gary Tonin, is fighting tomorrow. And
good call.
Nobody really has brought anything up. He's sort of been quiet about it. And if you look at his first fight, he looked amazing. I'm curious to see how he looks in his second fight and how he continues to look. But this is a guy you want to keep your eye on because, man, he looked like a striker in his debut. And just keeping in mind that he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and that's his bread and butter. I'm definitely keeping my eyes on that guy.
Sean El-Shadi, what is under the radar?
Well, for me, it's the fourth fight on this main card this weekend, the one that no one's really talking about. I mean, we're all focused on sort of these champions and ex-champions and Alvarez Poirier, obviously. But, man, Alexander Hernandez, it just came out of nowhere with that knockout in Beneil Dariush. Then he sort of disappeared. We haven't heard much. We haven't seen much from him since. He's going in against, it's a very tough guy in Olivier Alba and Mercier. And the winner of that fight really feels like they belong in that lightweight top 10. And that is, I'm keeping my eyes squarely on that. That's going to be a super interesting fight. I am excited to see what comes from that.
And I will end the segment of Under the Radar by saying, I don't know if people saw this, but I believe several Russian promotions, most notably ACB, canceled, I believe, up to 3 shows on their calendar. It's hard to know exactly what that means, but ACB had been a great recruiting and grooming grounds, I should say, for top guys out of that part of the world. So the sort of Russia, Eastern European part of the world. And I don't think that they have folded operations. I don't think that would be fair to say, nor do I wish to be overly alarmist. But when an organization cancels not 1, not 2, but 3 shows, that should get your attention. What it means for Russian MMA, I don't know. What it means for those prospects who are looking for fights or everyone else on those cards, we'll have to see. But keep your eye on that. That could be something to pay attention to as the year progresses. Okay, don't go anywhere. We took your questions for our next segment, which is going to be called After the Beat. Those questions came in the form of tweets using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. We have cobbled them together. We have picked the very best, and we are now going to answer them in a spectacularly stupid fashion. So don't go anywhere. That comes next. Stick around. All right, we're back. Luke Thomas, Danny Segura, and then via Skype, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, is our friend and yours, Sean El-Shadi. We took your tweets. They were submitted to us using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. I picked a bunch this time because I was worried it was going to be, it was almost a 2-man show, by the way. So that's why the cameras are all jerry-rigged and poor Sean El-Shadi. Sean, did you shower this morning? Don't even lie.
Oh, man, I got like a 2-minute shower in right after the Conor thing and threw together. I ironed this real quick. It was very last second.
Yeah, you're the one using Febreze. That's the truth of it. I see you over there. All right, so I've got a bunch of tweets ready. Let's go ahead and get this started. Not a moment to lose. What do we have first? Oh, this is from our friend Dr. Jed Meshew II. Could his title be more pretentious, honestly? Why do y'all keep ducking my fiery takes? I've got an hour of material on Nick Newell alone, and don't get me started on this Covington fiasco. On a related note, and Sean, we'll go to you first. Does it seem like the UFC are doing inane things more often than they did before, or is it just me? Now, you know as well as I do that Jed, his takes are only lava. There is never any nuance to any of them, but does he have a point?
You're right. There is very rarely middle ground with his takes. They're either very cold or very, very, very hot. In this case, I think he's right, man, and it's a symptom of it's similar to what we've been talking about sort of the whole show. The demands of the schedule and the lack of Conor, John Jones, Ronda Rousey, big stars has really created an environment where anything goes. They have slots to fill, and they're just going to fill them however they're going to fill them, and whatever happens, happens. And if guys miss weight, they can fight in title fights. If guys, just get interim titles, they can take them away at last second's notice. It's all by the seat of their pants at this point. So I think he's onto something.
Danny, someone said to me the other day, it was like, dude, what happened to the best fighting the best? And I was saying to myself, well, that still mostly happens, but as like a operating, as like an operating ethos, that shit's out the window completely.
Oh yeah, it's long gone, and this is the butterfly effect, right? There used to be champion, you fight #1 contender, and everything used to run normal, right? The moment they started making super fights, the moment champions started having a little more leverage and not fighting, and because let's keep in mind, I know you guys have said, like, for example, the schedule has demanded and has really drained and made all these issues, right?
Let me clarify. Not merely the number of shows, but the number and type of shows has put a unique kind of pressure on them.
But if we look at the past 4 years, since 2014, the pay-per-view numbers have remained the same, really.
Yeah, to everyone's detriment.
But it's really all the champions wrote. You have 13 slots, right, of pay-per-views, and every single headliner has to be a title. So you got all the champions rotating and fighting those slots.
Yep.
So the moment a champion fights less, that means others have to fight more, and that's the real issue. The moment they started giving Conor McGregor the super fights, the fights at welterweight, that disrupted the whole order that the sport was based on and that the company operated in. And now that's why you see them making all kinds of decisions, because they have to fill in, these holes. They have to, plug in these champion fights. So.
I know, but it's also crazy, Sean, like this ESPN deal. I love this ESPN deal. I think MMA heading to streaming, and I know people are down on DAZN, a.k.a. DAZN, a.k.a. the worst name ever, a.k.a. oh my God.
I don't think it's that bad.
A.k.a. DAZN, really?
It's not that bad. Well, if you make it seem DAZN, if you just say the zone, it's not that bad.
Yeah, but it's DAZN.
Awful. That is objectively awful.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as, child abusers enjoy streaming. I mean, they're not calling it that. But short of that, it's pretty bad. But the point being is, I'm actually excited about it. I'm going to subscribe to it. I think going to streaming is absolutely what combat sports and the UFC needs. But part of that deal that UFC has, Sean, with ESPN calls for 12 pay-per-views. 12 pay-per-views per year over 5 years? I don't buy it. I don't buy that in 2023 the UFC is going to be running 12 pay-per-views a year. I don't buy that even a little bit. Do you?
I agree with you 100%, man. Because it's not tenable. It's completely untenable at this point, and I don't feel like they're getting the guaranteed money with ESPN. They have no reason to sink their own pay-per-view business at this point by putting on lackluster shows. I agree with you 100%.
All right, let's go to the next tweet. If you had a mega-rich father, Danny, who would you want to perform at your birthday party? Now, I was a little hesitant to put this in there. I do not want to make this about Dana White's parenting, and I do not want to make this certainly about this 16-year-old child who does not deserve to be covered in that way. But just thinking out loud, independent of the particular issues at MMA, if you had a mega-rich dad, who would you want performing at your birthday party?
I'll go with the Strokes.
The Strokes?
Yeah.
I literally know nothing about them.
It's a good band, New York City band.
You like whiny white dudes. What is up with that? Is that why, is that why we're friends?
I like all kinds of music. I mean, You're giving me literally 15 seconds to pick.
F off. Every time you post something on social media, it's some fucking Brooklyn band where half the members have...
Breaking news, I live in Brooklyn.
Yeah, half the members have lice, and they're just whining about why girls don't like them. It's like, dude, you gotta...
I also listen to hip-hop. I listen to all kinds of things. So
I bet you listen to hip-hop where the guys sing, too, don't you?
No, not necessarily.
Who do you like?
I mean, I listen to all kinds of hip-hop. What's up?
I know.
I can go old school, Tribe Called Quest.
Exactly.
Listen to a little bit of like NWA. How about some modern stuff? I know you're a Tekashi 6ix9ine fan now.
No, not really. He's a terrible rapper, but
they're always playing him on my block.
Do you really?
They're always playing him on my block. Yeah, I go out my street.
No, I'm more of a Freddie Gibbs type. You know, smashing on these slim fast fools is kind of what I like. What do you like, Sean? If you were 16 and your dad had unlimited money, more or less, who would you want to play at your show or your birthday party?
Oh, man. If I have unlimited money, I guess I'm requesting maybe some Run the Jewels, some Danny Brown, get some Kendrick in there, something like that.
I'm so old. Who is Danny Brown?
He's a rapper? I don't know how else to describe that other than he's a rapper.
You know, I didn't even know who Post Malone was until last week. How lame am I?
Pretty lame.
Pretty fucking lame. That's what I am.
That makes you cooler, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't. I can assure you it does not. It makes me more socially ostracized, I suppose, which confers a degree of coolness, but it's not coolness. The answer to that is, for me, but if I was 16, like, what was I listening to at 16? Like, what were you listening to at 16?
At 16,
were you here in the States yet?
Yeah, I was in the States. 16, I must have been early high school. Well, early high school, EDM was popular. I mean, you gotta keep in mind,
I don't know who you are anymore.
I grew up in Miami, so like Ultra was like a huge thing back then. So I was probably listening to like some electronic music, but I can't remember off the top of my head what exactly was going on when I was 16.
When you were 16, Sean, who were you listening to?
Oh man, I was way into metal and hard rock. So it was probably like some 9 Inch Nails or just all sorts of obscure metal bands from Scandinavia.
Yeah, see, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I was listening to Vulgar Display of Power when I was 16. So that's who I'd probably have. If I was 16, I'd have Pantera come and play. But, of course, half the members are gone now. But if it was today...
Wait, hold on. Kid Cudi. That's what I was listening to.
Kid Cudi.
Dude, you wanted the truth? Here's the truth. All right, give me your hot take, because I know you got something to say.
Everyone watching this right now, do me a favor and get on YouTube and just type in Sean Price hates Kid Cudi and see what comes up. You're welcome. Okay? You're welcome. Sean Price, of course, also, all my favorite rappers are dead. So I'd have Sean Price play. And then I'm going to see Dying Fetus, I think Gorgasm, and who's the other band that's playing in New York City? I cannot wait to see them. My favorite album, I don't know what your favorite Dying Fetus album is, Sean. I'm more into a Descendant to Depravity kind of guy. Maybe Reign Supreme, but that's just me, right?
I can't tell you that my Dying Fetus, my accent about them is a little
Dude,
wacky.
Look at how mad he is. Look at how mad you are.
Steve.
I'm not.
Do you think I pick on you too much?
I like Kid Cudi. I'll say it. It's not a big deal.
Gotta put some hair up on his chest.
You like what you like. That's totally fine.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not really a Dying Fetus type.
Yeah, we can fix that. We can fix that.
I'm good.
We'll just, you know, we'll man you up a little bit. That's all right. Blicky with the stiffy. All right. Ahead of UFC Calgary, what is your favorite moment at a Canadian UFC event? Ooh. Examples: Jones Gustafson. I forgot that was in Toronto. Jones Belfort. Mears Kimura on Big Nog. Condit's comeback versus Rory. DJ 240 59 sub. It was on Horiguchi. I can't remember anymore. Condit versus Hendricks. GSP Condit. Aldo Hominick. Machida front kick on, that was on Couture. GSP Sarah 2. Danny, what about you?
I would say for me the most memorable was GSP Condit. Because that fight, like GSP at that point, he was just like dominating everyone. And the fight looked like most GSP fights, but then you had, I don't know, when was that high kick? At one point, it might have been like the third or fourth round.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And everybody, I remember I was watching it at a bar, and everyone was just like, whoa, you know, and it was just like a big climax. And it was a really bloody fight, and it was just a really, it was just a great fight, really.
What about you, Sean?
In terms of fight, it would be Jones Gustafson easily. That's one of my favorite fights ever. But just in terms of a pure moment, for me, it's a little random, but it's Mark Hominick walking out for his Jose Aldo fight with coming home, ringing through the arena, and that was before that was really cliche, and that was really the last run for the whole Sean Tompkins crew. You had Sam Stout and all those guys just like along with him, and I wrote a long story about that. So for me, that's a little special moment in my heart.
I'm just trying to think about, for me, I was there for that. I remember it quite distinctly. I was actually sitting right next to Mauro Ranallo, and the place was just electric with energy when that happened. Of course, when GSP came out, it was the Shields fight. It was a similar thing. But for me, it's got to be Condit's comeback. I just remember Condit getting whooped on and then just, putting the lumber to Rory McDonald there in that third round and finding a way to dig it out. I'm not suggesting to everyone else it's the best one, but it's the one I don't know. I can just remember. You ever have those moments in fights where you just remember where you were and everything around you and who was there and who was not there, who was talking, what the sound was, what the lighting was, what the weather that day was. There are certain moments like I have like that, and I can remember exactly where I was for Condit's comeback against McDonald. That's it for me. We got a bunch of these, so let's fire through. How do you think MMA media, Danny, has changed? Actually, let me go to Sean. He's a little bit more of an OG on this one.
Sure.
How do you think MMA media, Sean, has changed and possibly influenced the sport of MMA? I got a couple of thoughts, but what do you think?
That's an interesting question. Just in terms of how the actual industry has changed over my time.
Oh, we're having some Skype problems. While we're fixing that with Sean, I'll pitch it. Let me go first on this one, if I may, since I'm a little bit older. So I've been in MMA media, I don't know if it's official or anything, but I've been doing this since about 2006 or 7. Obviously, social media has changed a lot. It's a lot more gossipy than it used to be, even though it was still pretty gossipy back in the day. Some of it hasn't changed at all. The one thing I'd say is, and I bear responsibility in this regard, which I have no problem admitting, anti-doping is plays a bigger role in MMA than it used to, I think in part because of the media. But the media is still kind of the same. It's a little more European than it used to be. It wasn't very European back in the day. It's a little younger, but there are not many jobs in MMA media. So all the old guys who were there before, like me, were still there because we haven't been fired yet.
Yeah.
Give it time. But you know what I'm saying? Like once it's like the Supreme Court, like you have to wait till Scalia dies before somebody else comes in there. From your vantage point, what have you noticed? As
far as changes, I haven't been around covering the sport for long enough for me to notice any big changes. But I would say as far as how it influences the sport, I feel like MMA media is very responsible for a lot of the matchmaking. You get on social media or talk to a journalist, get on a show and just throw their shot, call out fighters, and really create beefs and rivalries that eventually, bleed on and matchmakers go, okay, we can make that fight happen. So that's something that I think, MMA media affects a lot in the sport.
Sean, we go back to you. What do you think?
Well, I wasn't able to hear your answer, and I would have liked to, but for me, the time I've been in the industry, it's changed in a couple ways. I think there's a lot more focus now on video. And just in social media in general, it seems a lot more video heavy. But also, just in general, I don't know how to articulate this, but the way we cover the sport, I feel like has changed dramatically. Just with the rise of social media, it's much more instantaneous. It's much more little bite-sized pieces as opposed to larger chunks. I don't know if that's good or bad necessarily. But I feel like this sport has adopted with the times and kind of evolved with the times.
The one thing I would say is I certainly do not believe in quotas, but it cannot be coincidental that the first time we had a woman on this show was the last show that we did, right? There's just not many women covering this, It was funny, and there's not many women watching it. Like, I know when Rhonda was around, people thought that there was, but there's not. My wife hilariously one time went to me with some event, and no one knows who I am, but at MMA events, I have a little bit of a recognizable face. And she was joking, and she was like, oh, you better not be talking to women. And I was like, sweetheart, I have great news for you. No one who reads or watches my work has a uterus. I can almost guarantee it. It is not a thing. And that bleeds into the fact that it's not really who's watching, but who is participating on the other side. In fact, you know this as well as I do, Sean, the people who ultimately become MMA media almost always start as fans. It's not that editors find some sports reporter in the newsroom and then decide, okay, you're covering MMA one day. It's somebody who pushes up through the ranks and says, hey, notice me because I'm a fan and I love this stuff. That part has not changed at all, but at the same time, because the audience hasn't changed much, you don't have, it's kind of the same old crop. And again, people are doing great work, but I wouldn't mind a change of pace here or there. That's all. So, all right, what do we have next? You're on death row, Sean, and you're offered a last meal. What is it, and why are you on death row, Sean? What did you do?
Oh, man, I don't know. I want to know that, too. Last meal.
Yeah.
So last meal for me, like it would have to be a little specific because I'm a celiac, so I can't eat gluten. But if I'm on death row and I'm about to die, I don't know that I care about not eating gluten because at that point, who matters? So I'm getting like the biggest bucket of fried chicken possible and biscuits and maybe some pizza and some donuts. Like I'm just going ham on it. I'm just eating all this stuff that I can't actually eat.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what happens if you eat gluten? What happens to you?
Really bad things. Like I'll get stomach issues, or I'll sometimes I had a really bad brain issue at one point when I was a kid because of it. Like it's pretty serious. But at that point, if I'm on death row, I don't care. I'm eating so much fried chicken, like it's obscene.
Danny, what are you eating? Death row. Last meal.
Probably pizza.
Wow.
A lot of pizza, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, pizza.
Yeah.
You have pizza outside. You want that as your last
Pizza's
meal?
delicious. Are you kidding me?
Look, I'm not hating on pizza. Pizza.
Or maybe.
What do you have on your pizza? What do you put?
Pepperoni and mushrooms.
Not bad. What about what goes in your pizza, Sean?
Oh man, get a little bit of. See, I'm a meat lover, right? So I'll get a little bit of sausage, a little pepperoni, salami. I literally just ate some this morning, trying to scarf it before the show. Maybe put some spinach on there just to feel like slightly healthy. Yeah. I've been putting on broccoli. I've been getting pizza with broccoli lately.
Oh,
that's really good.
You absolute you sicken me. Is what you do. Broccoli on pizza? What the fuck could possibly be the point?
Hey, I'd never tried it, but yesterday I got it and it was actually really good. So don't knock it until you try it.
You should try cigarette butts on pizza or banana peels. They're que rico. No, I'm not doing that. I would have, if it was going to be pizza, I like jalapenos and pepperoni.
Okay, that's pretty good combo. Yeah.
But my last meal, what would I have? Now, let's say we could see if it's the prison. Here's the X factor. Are the prison chefs making it? Because if the prison chefs are making it, you got to just go with a tried and true. I think the fried chicken's probably the best thing in that circumstance because it's hard to mess up fried chicken, right? But if we could like order out, like if you could Uber Eats,
seamless.
If you could seamless web Grubhub your last meal, it'd be a nice steak. It would be an absolute prime rib. That's what I would have. Yep. And then you could put some. Go ahead.
How do you take your steak? Like, how do you cook it?
The only way that steak should ever be cooked.
Well done, right?
Rare or medium rare, ever. That is the only acceptable answer.
Danny, I swear to God, you better have been kidding.
Yeah, I was kidding. No, for sure.
Okay.
Medium.
Medium's even a little too high, but medium rare and rare is the way to go. How do you cook your steak? Medium rare?
Oh, medium rare. Come on, that's not even like a question.
Yeah, and then, a bottle of Jack Daniels. All right, what's next?
I like
Canelo versus Triple G did 1.3 million buys. Does McGregor versus Habib go over 1.3 million? I would be shocked, Sean. I would be shocked if it does anything less than 1.3. I think 1.5 or higher would be the floor in my judgment.
For Conor versus Habib?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's gonna break a new ceiling for what a UFC pay-per-view can do, especially. I mean, Conor had his thing in court today, but we're going to see that footage of him throwing the dolly so many times over the next couple months. So I would be stunned if that did less than 1.3.
I think it actually does too.
I mean, it does 2 million buys?
I think that's the biggest fight you could possibly put on in MMA.
In combat sports?
In combat sports, yeah.
I mean, what's bigger? What's bigger? Conor versus Habib, or if it was on pay-per-view, let's say in Vegas, Wilder versus Joshua. I'm going to say Conor.
I would say Conor because I feel like Conor, and just given the fact that I feel like everything that has happened right now, it seems like a black cloud over him. But this just sort of made his legendary status even greater. I mean, here in the MMA media, we're all discussing like, oh, this is a black eye for the sport, and this is horrible for Conor McGregor's career. I go to the barber shop to get a haircut. I'm talking, and my barber's asking me questions about it, and he's like saying, "Wait, Conor McGregor is un bacán. Like, he's the man. He's so cool. This is people find this interesting." And I agree 100% with Sean. That Dolly clip is going to be played over and over, and this is a natural rivalry involving two of the biggest and two of the best fighters in the world, so I think it could easily do over 2 million.
All right, next. Brendan Schaub recently said that it's time to appoint an actual business head of the UFC to replace Dana, i.e., like the head of the NBA, so Adam Silver, for the UFC to progress. Do you think this is correct, Danny, or is having a promoter part of what makes MMA great?
In combat sports is a little different than other sports, whether you just don't go to a press conference and just give vanilla answers. You're supposed to hype up the sport, so you need a hype man. You need somebody that can go in there, sell the fight, and tell you why you need to buy that fight. So you do need someone like Dana White. Now, with that comes a little bit of extra baggage that Dana does certain things like bash fighters that certainly looks bad. But it's kind of hard to have one without the other. So I do think for an MMA promoter in combat sports, you need that type of personality.
You know what I think, Sean? I don't know how you get rid of Dana White, because I actually do think he's when he wants to be, a very gifted promoter, but sometimes he doesn't want to be. But what's missing is the good cop. So before you had, like, whether it was deserved reputation or not, because there's reasons to believe that maybe it wasn't, but you had Lorenzo as the good cop and you had Dana as the bad one, and it's the tandem that works, in my judgment. Because sometimes you want the bad cop, sometimes you want the good one. What's missing now is there's no good cop.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. Although I would ask, at this point, is Dana even a promoter? Like, when's the last time he promoted in terms of the actual definition of promoting? Like, what's the last fight that you can remember that he promoted in an active sense to try to get you to buy it?
Not like he used to. People forget the old series that he used to do where they would follow him around. I forget what it was called. Maybe it was even called Embedded. I don't even remember. But the Dana Vlogs. And this guy was out there doing radio show, TV show, radio show. The last time I saw him doing that was when Conor went to jail.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing it a lot for Maymac. It seemed like he was really in his element for Maymac. But I can't remember in the last, even 2018, the last year, like seeing him actively go out and push a fight.
All right, and that brings us to our very last one. Here we go. Sean, did you watch Ronda Rousey's Shark Week special? And here's sort of an addendum to that. What is the cringiest thing you've ever watched involving an athlete on TV, like some kind of crossover thing?
So I have no idea what Ronda Rousey's Shark Week special is. I'm completely oblivious to this, but...
Jose, can we just make a point? Jose, can we also make a point? Shark Week sucks. It's like, I don't care anymore.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you 100%. My girl loves Shark Week. I've made this argument 1,000 times. But I'm judging based on the question that you asked and the way you framed it, that her Shark Week special was very cringy and awful.
No. I can confess to not seeing it. I can just only imagine, because Shark Week sucks, any kind of programming within Shark Week would be also equally sucky. But that's just a guess.
Well, no, I did not see it.
I didn't see it as well, but I am a fan of Shark Week.
Is Shark Week your other favorite hipster Brooklyn band?
No, well, I actually don't have cable, so I don't watch it. But the times that I've watched it, dude, it's entertaining. Are you kidding me?
What? I mean, it's
the footage that they get. I'm a huge fan of National Geographic. And,
me too.
And any nature documentary, Planet Earth. So sharks are some of the most interesting creatures in this world.
Yeah, but you don't have to wait till Shark Week to like read up on them.
That's true, but that's when they roll out all these amazing footage, fucking going super slow, catching crazy prey. You're just a hater.
I'm not a hater.
Man.
I like sharks.
On sharks, man.
I've been. By the way, raise your hand if you've been to the National Geographic Museum. Oh, this guy. So.
Hey, whoa.
I wanted to say expletives and I can't.
I have also been to the National Geographic Museum, and I love how throughout the course of this hour and a half, or at least this 30 minutes, you have been so thoroughly disappointed so many times in both me and Danny when it comes to music, broccoli on pizza, Shark Week. It's great.
He's just a hater.
Look, one of us has to crack the whip for manhood up here, and apparently that's me. So, that's the duty that I'll actually adopt.
And you're saying you don't like Shark Week?
I like sharks. I don't like Shark Week.
So how can you like sharks and not like Shark Week?
Because Shark Week is for losers and nerds. Hashtag NerdBash 2018. Someone's got to keep the hashtag alive. I'll carry the mantle. Point being is, it's not interesting. It's dumb shit like, can Michael Phelps outrace CGI sharks? Oh my God, who could possibly care about this nonsense? You want to help sharks? Have you donated anything to conservation efforts? Fuck no, you haven't. I have. Who cares about sharks? This guy. You can call me Mr. Shark. You can call me Shark Week. I'm Shark Week Thomas up in here. I'm the only one who cares about sharks, and I don't watch bad Discovery Channel programming. There we go.
We'll leave it as that.
Look at the lineup here, and look who's mad. There's one guy who's mad.
I'm not mad. I don't know why you're saying. If anything, you're mad at that. I don't know, that I'm into stuff that you're not into.
You know what? You know what, Sean?
Like somebody who's mad would say.
Yeah. Don't let anyone ever tell you bullying doesn't work, because it does. All right, Sean, I know this was a short notice thing. I really appreciate you making an effort to join us here on the show today. Good luck with the coverage all week. Of course, you can read Sean's coverage at MMAFighting.com. We have all of our crew up in Calgary, so we've got tons of content coming your way. For Sean on the end of the screen, there's Danny. I'm Luke. Hands up, chin down, let him fly. This is the MMA Beat.